Welcome everyone to Dr. Todd Talks Tunes, Episode 3, and our topic today is the music of Sting. Dr. Todd Talks Tunes is presented by OLLI, the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Cal State Monterey Bay, and I am your host, Dr. Todd Samra. We are very happy to be talking about Sting today. We're going to focus on his solo career more than his career with the Police. He did release a solo album during his time with the Police, The Dream of the Blue Turtles, which came out in 1983. It was my very first CD, my very first compact disc. And I'm not concluding that album today because he was doing that album while he was still a member of the Police. And it kind of is a little bit of like an experiment. He was taking advantage of an opportunity to do things that maybe he had not done before, namely music related to jazz and such, and put together a really cool album in Dream of the Blue Turtles. But his first solo album after his career with the Police came in October of 1985 with Nothing Like the Sun. And this album would kind of become his prototype, if you will, for some of his later albums like Ten Summoner's Tales and Brand New Day. He got away from the format a little bit with the Soul Cages, which was the follow-up album to Nothing Like the Sun. I think in part because I think he felt he couldn't just do a sequel to Nothing Like the Sun, which is I think what many of us fans expected. And maybe our initial listen to Soul Cages was a little bit of a disappointment because we wanted a sequel to Nothing Like the Sun. But this particular album, Nothing Like the Sun, is a legendary song collection where I think every note on it is really precious. Sting indicates that he is a learned, educated man in the title, which of course is taken from a Shakespeare sonnet. So that alludes to his maybe his preference for good poetry, which we have a lot of wonderful poetry on this album, as well as some very, very interesting musical composition. A lot of the album focuses on love. There are 3 tracks on the album with love in the title. Or heart in the title. The Lazarus Heart, Be Still My Beating Heart, and Straight to the Heart. So he's obviously, he's in his mid-30s here. He's very much in touch with his loving side and his relationship with Trudy Styler. And so a lot of that love is part of the focus of this album. It begins with a tremendous song. The Lazarus Heart, the first song on the album, I think is just an absolutely brilliant piece of music, followed by Be Still My Beating Heart, which got quite a bit of radio play, and there was a music video for that song also. But I want to bring our attention first to Straight to My Heart, because he sets a precedent with this song that he's going to follow up on every album by having a tune that's in an asymmetrical meter. In this case, he chooses 7/8. So if we just give a quick little listen and keep track. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's a little bit, as we would call, asymmetrical. It doesn't fall into a symmetrical repeating pattern like we would find in 2, 3, and 4. It's an unusual time. And that's very clever. And this is something that many English composers have done before Sting. But we're really looking at a different group of composers. We're looking at people like Herbert Howells, Benjamin Britten, William Walton, composers such as this, that generation that preceded him, that really made fantastic use of asymmetry to the point where a lot of English music's flow, asymmetrical flow, doesn't even feel asymmetrical. They're quite clever in their use of time. So Sting was really kind of following here more in a English musical tradition than he is maybe a rock and roll tradition. If we listen just to a little bit of the first song on the album, The Lazarus Heart, there's not a lot of musical complexity here. Give a short little listen. He's just kind of winding us in a little bit. But it's really not overly complex in terms of harmony. And then Branford Marsalis comes in, and it's amazing. So he's really relying here on orchestration and in terms of quality production. The sound and quality of the use of reverb and effects on this album are sublime. It's absolutely like fluid. It's very, very well done. And we see him demonstrate throughout the album an understanding of harmony, but also an understanding of texture and orchestration. One of the most popular songs on the album is Fragile. And that was the song that I played at the beginning of the show, by the way. Sorry to not continue with the Beethoven, but I thought it was more appropriate. If we just take a quick look at Fragile, for example, it's a very simple song. It's an E minor, which is the easiest key to play in on a guitar, because the lowest string is an E. And if we look at it, it's a 1-4-5 chord progression in minor. So we have the 1 chord, the 4 chord, the 5 chord, which is a major chord, and we just repeat it. If blood would flow, etc., etc. It's a really pretty song, and it's very simple in its construction. It only uses these 3 chords, even in the refrain. So it's very English. It's very Beatles-like, if you will, in that the Beatles were really excellent at combining the folk qualities of English song with elements of rock and roll. And we're seeing Sting make great use of some of these same folk elements in this piece. We also see on the last song on the album, I think this is a great way to kind of finish the album, the Secret Marriage, which ends on a half cadence. And if you're a musician, you understand what that means. But to draw a parallel to it, if I was doing Happy Birthday or Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and then I don't give you that last chord, which would be that. Ending on the 5 chord, leaving it unresolved. And that's how he ends the last song on the album, which, you know, if you ask me, is brilliant, especially for like a rock album. We also have some hits on here. Englishmen in New York is particularly popular. It's very clever. Once again, it makes great use of poetry. And then the hit We Will Be Together, which was a big radio hit for that time. He also does a cover on this album, Little Wing, which was a Jimi Hendrix song. He uses a whole different band just for that one particular track. I think it's one of the most outstanding arrangements, if you will, of Little Wing ever done. Of course, he did it in partnership with Bill Evans. So, and today is 5/4, which is Dave Brubeck Day. It's also May the 4th be with you, and also with you. And so, that's a fantastic thing also. I do want to bring our attention to the track Sister Moon. It's so sultry. Of course, Branford Marsalis is a genius. That whole family. Ellis passed away last month. Anyway, that adds to I think the perfection of this particular tune. Sister Moon will be my guide. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. My hunger for her explains everything I've done. To howl at the moon the whole night through. You know, I go out of my mind if it wasn't for you. And things at the beginning, like the Lazarus Heart. I think that also has some really tremendous poetry. Looked beneath his shirt today, there was a flesh in his wound so deep and wide. And from the wound a lovely flower grew, from somewhere deep inside. He turned around to face his mother, to show her the wound that burned like a brand. But the sword that cut him open was the sword in his mother's hand. It's tremendous poetry. I think it's very rich, meaningful. It definitely is a farther reach from what we were used to in 80s pop music. This I think we can all kind of tell is a little bit higher quality of music and sound than we had just with the typical 80s album. And like I said, he's going to come back to this with 10 Summoner's Tales, and he's going to come back to it again with Brand New Day in terms of this format. At the time, he just simply said, I'm doing these albums more for the fans than for myself, which is what he really did with Soul Cages. It was a little more introspective and related to the death of his father. But these other albums, I think, are a prototype, a format, a paradigm, if you will, of what a good album should be. So take some time and listen to Nothing Like the Sun and enjoy some of the tremendous creative energy of Sting. We'll see you again next week. Thank you for joining us today on Dr. Todd Talks Tunes.